All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's water cooler chat where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's orchestrating, delegating, or broadcasting. We're going to go through the next little bit here with everyone that's involved, and people will trickle in. So if you are new, please put up your hand, and I can invite you up to stage where you can introduce yourself and hop into the conversation. It's pretty laid back and easygoing. I'll start with introductions, and then we'll hop into the topics. So the first, I'll start with myself. I'm Titan, been running the Titan Node Orchestrator since May of 2021. And today's topic is going to be actually a word of the day. So I'll put it into the water cooler chat. And the word of the day is soulbound tokens. Soulbound tokens are non-fungible tokens that a person can earn based on their job or education history. Unlike regular NFTs, these are non-transferable, so people can revoke them at any time. And soulbound tokens would represent a person's reputation or accomplishment, such as an extended resume. They can be stored in soul wallets. This is actually an article that Vitalik wrote about soulbound tokens. And basically goes over how if you lose your keys, you can create these guardians to give them power, and they can change your soulbound token to your new address. So yeah, that's the word of the day: soulbound tokens. If you want to read more about it, it's at vitalik.ca. So I figured I would just do a word of the day and hopefully bring some education to the crypto space as we go through and learn new things. So yeah, that's me. I'll introduce the next person here, Ben with Authority Null. Why don't you introduce yourself and a topic?
Hey guys, I'm Ben, run Authority Null, been transcoding since November last year, and no specific topic today.
Very cool. Thank you for joining us, Ben. Frank, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Frank. I'm running Ultima Ratio node with my wife Sienna since May 21, and I have no particular topic also today. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you for joining us, Frank. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a TPM at Livepeer. I've been running an orchestrator probably for just shy of a year now. And yeah, I also don't really have a specific topic, but the soulbound token, it's a curious concept. I think it grants more utility, or it's an easier way to explain utility in relevance to NFTs. And then I think the reclamation steps are pretty cool. It's interesting because a lot of it's pretty similar to how generating, revoking, and attesting PGP keys works. And I'm really glad that nobody at any point suggested, and there have been people who've suggested this, but that it wasn't mainstream for PGP keys being used as a means to attest that you're a person who owns a wallet or something. But yeah, definitely a good thing to read up on, even if NFTs aren't really your thing.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Alex. Yeah, the idea of it was actually spawned from a World of Warcraft soulbound items in World of Warcraft that Vitalik used to play, and I like the idea of it. I can't wait to see how it integrates into things. There was a mention of POAPs too, how POAPs should be soulbound tokens essentially. I don't know exactly how they work right now, but yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'm sure there'll be another fad over certain protocols on blockchains and stuff. So very cool. Papa Bear, I'm going to invite you up. Hopefully you accept my invitation. Although I'm sure you can invite yourself up. Papa Bear, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hi, I am Papa Bear.
You're very quiet. Oh, there he goes. Cool. Okay, well, I'll wait for him to join again. If anyone is in the audience, please feel free to welcome. I'll invite people up as they come in, and you can come up and introduce yourself and a topic if you have. Otherwise, we'll continue on. So I guess I'll just launch off with a topic then about improving the water cooler chat. I've been in a couple clubs, and it basically there's lots of different ways of bringing educational material to a club. And I'm curious as to has anyone else been in a club where they've seen something or there's some sort of format that has worked really well that you would like to see maybe in the water cooler? Like today, I just added the word of the day, right? Like, is that something? Is there anyone found anything that has been useful in that sense?
Not specifically. I like the way we've been doing it in the past.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, is people? Yeah, I guess the real question is just are people? Because I joined the graph. I'm starting to go to the graph meetings. I actually introduced myself as a Livepeer person, and everyone was like, "Oh, thanks for coming," and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." But they're very structured, right? Like they have time limits and a schedule, and when it hits an hour, they like close it off, even if the conversation's going. Like it's right on time. Is that where we want to trend? Maybe more structure, or do we think that just letting it flow the way it is better? Do we have any opinions on that?
I think in terms of topics, maybe a little bit more structure could be good. At least in, a few days in advance saying like, here's what we're going to talk about. So then if the people who maybe hadn't been contributing, they could see maybe a topic that resonated with them or that they had a question about that they didn't have answered in some other channel. And that could be good. But I agree with your direction and not letting things get too formalized, because then it seems exclusionary to some people.
Well, there you go. So people like it then. That's good news. Papa Bear, are you with us? I see you're down below, but you haven't come up. Drake, I've invited you up. Would you like to come up? Always good to invite people up. Cool. Well, I guess it hasn't been many topics, but I'll hop into one real quick. I guess the question is, I've been building. Has anyone experienced? Maybe I need like a Livepeer core developer for this, but anyone who's really familiar with video tech, how important is like AV1 trend? I know the 3090 cards the 30 series cards have AV1 decoding, but like, because I'm looking at building like miners, right, that I can distribute, and obviously you can buy like 1660 supers for like $150 or something really cheap, and the cheapest 30 series card is I think somewhere around like $400, and like, how important is AV1 support, do you think, going into the future?
So I can make a few comments here. So my understanding with AV1 is it's not really a standard yet, but it's purported to replace VP9 and eventually just be basically offer the highest fidelity you can get per a unit of bandwidth. And then I think talking to video people, supposedly one of the bigger angles here is whether or not HDR becomes a big thing on the consumer side. So obviously then like there's more of a requirement for what you're sending over the wire. So we'll see. I mean, granted, like 4 years ago, people were like, oh yeah, like VP7 and VP9 will be like the only thing anyone uses. And that wasn't quite the case. And then, like X265 is just becoming pretty widespread. So we'll see. I mean, it's a cool question, like hardware wise. And I think it'll be interesting. I think the A40 is capable of bidirectional AV1. But I think it's still like a little early to tell. And then with Livepeer, it'll be curious how the landscape changes there. But yeah, those are my comments.
I guess it is AV1 in your opinion going to be like the IPv6 of IP addresses, like it's supposed to be so much better, and yet still nobody has really no one really uses them. Like, it doesn't seem to have hit mainstream.
So codecs are they're really, really complex. So what's difficult is it's hard to talk about them in just a few dimensions or with a few angles. So for instance, going from x264 to x265, there was basically a doubling of the capability. So for the same bandwidth, you could have twice the resolution. And of course, there are caveats with oh, what's the bit rate or what's the color depth and those kind of. But for someone watching Netflix who doesn't really care about the quality of gray gradients and that kind of thing, it was a game changer from the side of whoever's pushing content over the wire and what you can deliver to someone with a limited connection. The high level marketing stats for AV1 is that assuming you have the same bandwidth, AV1 is about 30% better than HEVC in terms of compression. And the other caveat is that you get, I think, 50% of. I remember. I need to look up the metric, but there was another metric relative to VP9. Yeah, so it's typically AV1 codec is 30% better than HEVC in terms of compression efficiency. It saves up to 30% in bandwidth for the same image quality in HEVC and 50% bandwidth of VP9. So it's it's like the next step. I wouldn't say it's like a quantum leap. But yeah, so the key here is it's all just bandwidth utilization. And I think it'll be interesting to see, it's not surprising to see the decoding side happening first. Because for instance, the big thing that limited adoption of x265 was when it was when hardware accelerated x265 decode became something that's just in any device you buy. Now you can buy a Raspberry Pi, and the ARM chip has a small coprocessor for x265 or an optimization for it. So that's why I would predict that you'd maybe see a 2 to 3 year lag. But then again, a lot of stuff in video changes quickly, and we'll just have to see.
If I'm not mistaken, AV1 is open source as well, whereas the other ones aren't.
I think so. It's only open source. My understanding is it's open source because a lot of big content delivery companies and companies that wanted to make hardware about this pretty much got together and said, we're just going to share everything. So it's really similar to the Quanta initiative with a bunch of enterprise server stuff, where they said, we're tired of buying individually from vendors and redoing a bunch of work. Why don't we do that? And then they also just hate the FFmpeg team, which they're cool guys, but they haven't made it easy to sort of co-opt with a lot of their systems. And granted, it's still there's still royalties, but it is technically open source. So that'll be interesting. But I don't know. I high level, I would say buying hardware based on AV1 compatibility now might not lead to the best results, because no one knows what hardware is going to look like in 3 years. So that would be my input there.
Very interesting. I think they're working on the 40 series cards now, and I don't know if they have encoding on them as well. But yeah, very, very interesting. I just wonder if that's because I noticed in the Livepeer software itself, it does a test for, I think, AV1, does it not? Or is that V8? I don't know what I know that if you don't have a newer card, it fails like a certain test. And this is like a new thing, relatively.
Yeah, I think that's the VP8 or VP7 stuff. But I actually don't. I just don't know where AV1 is slotted even in like the Livepeer product pipeline. I mean, surely it's in there somewhere. I don't. My cursory understanding is it's not a huge immediate priority.
So does Livepeer not support AV1 right now?
I have to look into that. I'm sure there's probably a fork, or I'm sure Yaron or someone has looked into this. But I can get an answer on that. Right now I just don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm really curious about that. Like the hardware for the future of Livepeer, like whether we can continue just buying like used GPUs. 1070s are clearly the fastest and the best, and I mean best, I mean price per stream, maybe not in quality, but like price per stream, they're just absolutely monsters when it comes to this stuff. Buying a used 1070s to is going to be the method for growing your node, or is it going to be like support for higher codecs, higher greater quality stuff, right? Kind of curious about that, the direction of that, and what that prediction might be.
Definitely, and it'll be curious because I think at this point the ASIC or the dedicated coprocessor side of the industry, like NetInt, I would argue they're probably farther ahead in hardware product lineups that support AV1 relative to Nvidia. Because for Nvidia, like most of their focus is on the deep learning AI side. That's what's deciding kind of their memory buys, and it's largely what's dominating their like 2024 pipeline with TSMC. Because right now they're screwed because they over purchased with TSMC, assuming that mining demand would continue. So it'll be curious to see if their 4090 or if the 4000 series launch is botched because TSMC is like, well, like this is the lithography you paid for. This is what we're producing. Like tough luck, you have to pay us for it. So it's interesting is like the players that seem to have committed to AV1 early are smaller and a bit more nimble. And of course, like Nvidia will catch up. But the other thing is that most of their focus is like the only reason Nvidia focuses on NVENC and video on the high end is that it's sort of a pivotal part of deep learning like data pipelines. It's like if you're feeding a bunch of video or a bunch of stuff that has to be decoded and then processed, right? Like having a efficient way of doing that just it makes sense for their application. But the idea that there are prioritized hardware purely just for like streaming. I mean, they have, some product offerings for that. Like some of the Tesla cards, you can tell like they have, 4 co-processors. They're getting there, but like their engineering focus is on the deep learning side. And they're not really they don't try to hide that either. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Very cool. Mike Zuper, I see you've joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hey everyone, Mike Zuper, run the Zode app. Or no topic today, just kind of poking in on my lunch break, seeing what's going down.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Well, what other topics do we have? I don't think we have many topics today. I'll just put it out there. Does anyone have any questions lately about Livepeer performance, Livepeer releases, anything to do with Livepeer specifically?
Do we know when the upcoming? Oh, go ahead, Ben. Go.
I was actually just going to say that you were able to get Nginx sort of, kind of, maybe not really working in front of Livepeer, which was pretty cool to see. We at least managed to get streams coming through Nginx with Cloudflare proxy turned on, it just some things are still broken, but there's progress there, which is nice.
Yeah, it's good. I think the test streams, there was some erratic results in the test stream, some unknown stuff we posted in the chat that might be, if anyone could help debug it, I think that would be good. But I think we put that on the shelf right now because it's not working and we don't have answers. We don't know where to go. So I don't think anyone's got a pressing need for it. So we kind of just put it to the side.
So
Yep.
let me get this straight. You were using Nginx to proxy the stream itself, the entire stream, like just the discovery, or the whole streaming process?
The whole put Livepeer behind Nginx as a proxy for streaming and for, all the requests.
Oh. Oh, and that's when you use the Nginx the proxy manager. Is that right, Ben? You said you had
No.
Oh.
No, Proxy Manager is pretty limited for that kind of stuff. So everything we did with the proxy for Livepeer was through the config files.
Okay, so you were able to forward proxy TCP connections then.
Yeah, they're actually gRPC connections where they're submitting those requests. So there's a combination of like HTTP requests, and then some of there are gRPC requests, and just being able to map those out and identify what they are so you can proxy them was where we made our progress. So we were able to identify which calls were gRPC, which ones weren't, and then we got them to work. So then we saw streams coming through, which was awesome, but then we saw some erratic stream behavior, and then we also saw erratic test results. It seems like it's working, and it's still running right now in the test Zode app. So if you wanted to go look at the Vercel app and take a look at his streams, I mean, it's really weird. So again, we reached out into the Discord. Hopefully somebody can provide help on as to why that UI shows us as so erratic. But outside of that, I'll share the config files if anyone wants to tinker with it in their own environments. But what the key though here, Titan and everyone, just so they understand, is proxying Livepeer with Nginx is fine. You don't really need to do that per se, but where we're trying to go with it is in Cloudflare, there's a feature where you can proxy all the requests through their network. And if they have these edge agents out close to the ingest nodes, you could potentially get VPSs with GPUs that are not directly in the same data center as those ingest nodes, and still get good performance as it relates to latency scores and throughput, because you're leveraging Cloudflare's infrastructure to route the traffic to your node quicker and more reliably. So I think that's where we're really trying to get to is, do we really need to pay to get to that data center where that ingest node is, or can we get some cheaper alternative VPSs around the general region and still be able to compete on the latency score? And not only that, just serve good quality streams, right?
So by using a reverse proxy, basically what you're doing is you're setting up an ingest node, and then when you do the reverse side of it, you're trying to utilize something like Cloudflare infrastructure so that you get super high reliability, latency, all these kinds of things, so that when people can submit their stream to your ingest node, and then your reverse after that is like high quality infrastructure. Is that kind of what you're trying to do?
That's right.
Interesting.
But again, though, the key here too is the part where I think folks right now, if you look at the leaderboard and some of the orcs, where they're trying to get that 0.01, difference between each other, and trying to get that latency score, but also balancing it with your server cost. So like, to get to all the ingest nodes might be unattainable from a affordability perspective for most orcs. But if you use Cloudflare and as proxy, and you're able to reduce that gap, but still not be in every single ingest node, but still get good latency scores, you can compete then, right? You could still be small, compete, and not have to be shelling out all kinds of hardware to get to those nodes. So, just an interesting experiment.
Interesting. Yeah. Did you have to compile Nginx from source in order to add like all that functionality? Like you were?
No, I use the Docker containers, and I had already proven a lot of this stuff out on the Arbitrum nodes that I was doing this with. So it's not like this was new, but we wanted to apply the same theory from Arbitrum to Livepeer to see if we could get the same performance benefits. Um, but I didn't compile it. Although yesterday when you pinged me in the group about running the compiled version, I did compile it on my own last night, just messing around with it. So if we really wanted to play around with any of that MySQL load balancing stuff with NGINX, I can definitely help there. But that's kind of off topic.
Yeah, I appreciate that offer. I mean, I was just getting frustrated because I'm just not familiar with NGINX, and it's the first time installing it. And like, reality is, I probably don't need to be messing around with that. I'm working on different stuff.
Yeah, proxies in general could be a headache. I think everyone, shares in the misery what they were talking about, Arbitrum load balancing and stuff. So it's not an easy topic. Folks struggle with traffic. I mean, they're very complex tools and they require some skill and some expertise in the networking stack that, a lot of the tinkerers, don't have that depth. But I've been all up and down those stacks, so feel free to reach out if you get stuck.
Yeah, what I ended up doing was I figured out how to proxy the HTTP because that's relatively easy. Lots of examples out there. So I was able to proxy my Grafana dashboard. And then as for MySQL, I just decided, for some reason, I thought I forgot that you can just install MySQL on a VPS. Like for some reason, I thought you had to rent a MySQL database. Like, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait,
that's cool.
Why don't I just install this on the server that I have the proxy on? And then when I forward the domain there, that particular HTTPS request for port 3000 will get forwarded. And then the database will just run on this server that has much higher uptime and probably reliability than my own server. So I don't need to forward that TCP request anyway. I'll just host the database right there. And then,
even better.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, right?
Well, I really should just be hosting the Grafana dashboard on that VPS as well. Like, it's just it took me so long to get the Grafana dashboard to publicly show up on an iframe link outside of this.
Oh yeah.
It took me, and I have no idea what I actually did to make it work. So I don't really want to mess with it because I'm gonna spend a day just figuring that out again. Whereas like I could just proxy this and it'll be shorter.
I think a lot of folks are doing that though, so we probably should come up with a guide that shows how to do that because a lot of folks want to show their stats publicly, right? So, and you want to embed it in your website. So that seems like a common problem somebody can tackle.
Ben, wasn't that iframe thing? Because I think you sent me the snippet of code. It's either you added into Nginx or I think that's
with the proxy manager, which is the only one I've used to actually get embedding so far, but I'm working on doing it with traffic as well. But with the proxy manager, it's really simple. You change one thing in the grafana.ini and then you add something to the proxy manager UI, like one line, and you can embed stuff now. It's definitely something I can help people with if they're interested.
Yeah, allowing Grafana to be embedded is one part, but then there's a security problem with sites using different domains to access data. So you just have to make sure whatever you're setting up in the proxy that it can spell out who from a domain perspective can access that content. Most people will just put star, which means anybody can just pull the content from your website and put it on their website. And that's probably the easiest way to go. But ideally you want to say, hey, I know, N frames and L's allowed. I know, authoritynull.com's allowed. You want to kind of limit who can steal your data or use it, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you are exposing stuff when you do these kind of things, so it's important to.
And it's good though. I mean, to keep it public and open because I think that's where a lot of folks are sharing their data. But those are nuances. Again, if you're interested, I could help there. I think Ben's got some use cases working too.
Well, there you go. That's been my introduction to Nginx, and I'm glad it's over. But I'm sure I'll get used to it.
Is your hair still? Is your hair all spiky and still there? Did you rip any of it out yet?
Nah, I still got my hair. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I'm curious. I'm still trying to figure out how to like do this high performing public pool thing. I had to rewrite everything on the back end so that I could further distill who is actually performing well. And that's been a very big challenge. And this concept just might not work. Like after listening to you guys talk about like using Cloudflare infrastructure for reliability and security, it's like, man, this public pool thing is like it might just not work. And then after talking with our last guest last week, the public broadcaster, about Jarvis about his reliability threshold, it was like, oh man, a public pool is going to be very hard to achieve that.
Yeah, that was really eye-opening for me, hearing him, his kind of requirements for an enterprise level broadcaster coming in and what they expect.
Yeah.
The fact that he's going to go in there and load test your orc addresses, load test the public pool, and get quality metrics out to say, hey, public pool is good or individual orchestrator is good. To me, that says, there's going to be some separation in orchestrators. There's going to be the enterprise grade level stuff, right? Where it's big volume, big transactions. But I think there's still a market for mid-tier and even, the home network user. All being lumped into one pool just makes it hard to say the public pool is great versus, where broadcasters are probably going to want to target individual orchestrators and perhaps broker deals and things like that. So it'd be real interesting to see how this all shapes out over the next month or, year coming up. But it's going to definitely, I think it goes back to those graphic card conversations when I jumped in. Folks were like, I think there's going to also be some segmentation there where, if it's certain use cases that require certain hardware, there's probably going to be some specialty orchestrators that can accommodate those kinds of markets and serve them directly versus, a public pool approach. So I don't know. This is real fascinating to me, though. And again, eye-opening when you hear, a guy representing the country of Switzerland describe their requirements. And I'm not unused to that kind of requirement. So that's why I felt real comfortable listening to him. But it's definitely, wow, we got some work to do here, Livepeer. Let's get to it.
Yeah. I was excited to hear it because what's really cool and which I really, really appreciated from that conversation was he was actually going out and like testing orchestrators, like, picking individuals like Papa Bear, doing tests. And what he's interested in is 7 channels with high uptime, high quality, right? And which is great because those people should probably charge more way per pixel because they're super high quality, super high reliability. And then you get something like Picarto.tv, where you have basically a still image of someone drawing something for 8 hours. And if it missed a frame, you probably wouldn't even notice. If it missed 10 seconds and it was a still image, you probably wouldn't think the stream actually stopped. Like it's and there's a lot of that. Like I went on to dlive.tv, I think it's dlive, and like the amount of people AFK at their keyboard for half an hour, like literally it just showed like nothing happening on their screen. There was nobody's street. Like it was just like the loading, the World of Warcraft entrance.
They passed out.
Yeah, like
playing their game. They got drunk, passed out, and now they're stuck in a stream still going.
Yeah, like their characters. There's no commentary. There's no gameplay. It's just like their characters standing there for 40 minutes, like while they're making lunch. And I was like, right, like you're gonna not need that enterprise grade stream for this. You're gonna want that like cheap, really 1050x cheap leveraging distributed network, thing. And then so therefore you have these orchestrators, this marketplace of orchestrators offering different quality and different prices, right? And as a broadcaster, you get to choose based on that marketplace what your requirements are, right? And that for me was a real big like aha moment where like that's where this marketplace comes in. We can service a greater variety of needs, because like if you go with Amazon, they don't offer a discount if you just want less, they don't say, "Oh, you want less reliable streams? Great. It's like 10x cheaper." They don't say that, right?
Well, Titan, think of it this way too, though. Like in our selection criteria, if you look at the current broadcaster where latency and stake matter, right? Or if you're new, like those are the criteria we're choosing. And then we have one flat pixel and we're told to set it at the same amount. You know what I mean? Like, how can what you're describing work under those conditions, right? Like there's got to be more baked into like that selection criteria to say, you know what, these orcs are, over 90, 100, a year. These guys are up always. Like they have less than an hour downtime. That matters, right? Like, and then the same point is this guy is using high quality GPUs and producing, top streams at the lowest latency. Like that guy's got to be differentiated between as well, and that's going to cost more, right? So I think we're still really early on this part, and I don't know if there's enough focus on that part of the application either, or protocol, where we probably got to spend some more time looking at that.
I mean, you could always like if it got to the point where you're trying to say like, my GPUs can handle AI and machine learning and stuff like that. I mean, the simplest way would be throwing a flag into the config that says, I'm here for it. And, either do, like, if it gets to that kind of point where you want to make sure that people can actually sustain that, then throw in some kind of benchmarking to verify it. But, I mean, the simplest way would be flag it, right? As far as like identifying different values for different work, I mean, that again could also be another flag for different kind of thing, like break down how much you want to charge for each kind of thing. But that's like the most straightforward way to getting that implemented quicker than anything else, really.
We almost need like a community driven performance board where like, because like the thing about the Livepeer performance board and the default I put this in kind of quotes, the default implementation of the selection process. And if you ask to the core team, if you ask Eric and Yondon and Doug, it's like, this is not meant to be the selection process. This is like the selection process by default if you chose to not put anything in because you're lazy, right? Like you're supposed to choose orchestrators, or you're supposed to make your own selection process. You're supposed to, come up with your own reasoning on who you choose and why. It's just to get started, they created this default implementation, which is far from perfect because it just takes into account too many, just really broad factors, right?
No, I think that's fine, but that the signal is saying then that, we really want broadcasters to be, brokering the work, right? They don't want the public registry to matter then, right? Because if folks can't select from public based on criteria that's going to meet enterprise needs, or like you said, the one little guy who falls asleep at his computer while playing World of Warcraft, like the cost structures and the reliability and availability is very different. But if the broadcaster, now again, Livepeer is a broadcaster, so they are bound by this too, right? So they have to make choices based on it. But if their goal is to say, well, we're not going to be driving that's fine. Then that means individual who run broadcasters can make those decisions, and then they'll be the ones brokering the work to their own, set of nodes. Then I don't know if that's ideal for the project or the protocol.
It's cool that we're having these conversations now. I didn't think these kind of conversations would come into play for at least another couple of years, but it shows that Livepeer is growing.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It was really exciting to hear about that Switzerland broadcasting going with Livepeer. I watched that later last week.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Ali, on that? What were your main takeaways after you watched it?
I think it's really exciting to see. Switzerland has always been, trying new things out, and I see it as a bellwether in terms of technology. They're always. I mean, as a country, I think in a lot of ways they've taken on new ideas and new systems of everything, technology to just systems of government. So it hopefully will become the first step to encouraging other countries perhaps to do stuff like that. But overall, I mean, it just shows that we're starting to take more market share. And yeah, I'm a little new to hearing in the discussion about the exact requirements they were looking for. I didn't listen in that far, but yeah, very excited to hear that onboarding happen. I was surprised that it took so long for them to get started. I know we have some areas to work on with documentation, and a lot of that's improved over the past few months. But we have a community focused on orchestrating, and I think if there was more of some way to engage broadcasters in sort of these community discussions, we have broadcaster chats and Discord and things, but there was like a broadcaster call even, like what we do with orchestrating, that would be phenomenal, I think, for improving, looking for areas for improvement and helping out new people on board. It's also really new to see somebody not using Livepeer Inc., I think.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I mean, I caught in the conversation with Jarvis where he said he approached Livepeer Inc. first and decided that not to go with them. I mean, again, I'm sure he had some reasons for it, but I don't think he elaborated. But I think he did want to go with the self-service approach, but it didn't work. So he went down the rabbit hole himself and started setting everything up. But to your point on the broadcaster work, I think Ben, Papa Bear, and I have been looking at that problem real closely. I think we spun up some broadcasters, we did some testing, we filed some defects. So I also recently taken a look at the stream tester tool, because if you can't broadcast and you can't log and measure everything from broadcaster to orchestrator and transcoder, you're going to have a hard time. So that stream tester gives you like instant feedback. So I agree, we probably should form something a little more organized around the broadcaster. But I think, I don't know, Authority or Papa, if he's there. I don't see Papa, but if you guys are interested, I would love to get in there and start publishing what we're doing, and maybe have some feedback from the community to drive where we're actually working on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what a really cool community article that we could publish that would be totally independent of Livepeer Inc. is a reliability test as a broadcaster, right? Like, publish an article of like results of 24-hour, 48-hour, 70, 7-day streams. Publish the frame rate. I mean, obviously it's going to be geared towards marketing, so we're gonna segregate high performing orchestrators into one selection process and have them just display how reliable the network is in some way, right? But maybe we can even create our own testing system for motivating people to switch over. Yeah.
Well, that's what I started working on recently. Is I took the stream tester that they write today that does all the Vercel app data and everything. I took that thing and I stripped it down to just the broadcaster and just tracking a stream going through a broadcaster to the orchestrator pool, because there's a lot of stuff in there. But to your point, I just want to know, if I send something to the transcoder pool, do I get the results back in a timely fashion? And what happens when I send long streams or long duration? What happens when I send short ones? What happens when, quality matters? Like, how many segments are lost? Like, that kind of stuff I want to know very specifically, especially if I'm sending my stream through. So that's the stuff I'm going to be working on, because I know Jarvis is going to be working on that as well. And if we could head them off and say, hey, save you all this effort, here's a tool that does it, it gives more confidence towards them coming on board with our platform. So
I wonder, like I said, I wonder if we should create like almost like an explorer page, just like of a performance leaderboard, but of like live streams, just continuous live streams of the leaderboard, like, and you can even click and watch the stream, and like, just have the only problem is we would have like to make it free, or to like, because otherwise you got to pay ETH, right, for this continuous stream.
I was gonna say, send me your ETH account and I'll set it up for you.
Like, is this like, could this be a testnet thing, or should this be like a mainnet thing? Because because it would almost.
Well, that's what I was talking about in a chat too the other day. I was trying to get an off-chain version of it set up so that I can do it all for free, and just run it on VPSs. That means you don't pay anything, but you still at least get that feedback loop through the entire loop of the processing.
You could almost like create a leaderboard where, yeah, you just have a continuous stream. It never turns off. It goes one stream per orchestrator. You can watch that stream live even. It's just a recording, obviously. And then there's the metrics of how many frames have been lost, how many, all these kinds of things over the last 30 days. And it's this continuous stream. And then also you get beside it the amount paid in that time, right? So you have different orchestrators competing on how much the stream costed during this time. So you would naturally see higher price streams have higher reliability, lower price streams have lower reliability. And then you would have like this, almost this, because the current leaderboard doesn't tell us, it's a 45-second segment twice a day. Like, it doesn't really tell us much about your reliability other than twice a day you can stream for 45 seconds. Like, that's not
well, it's misleading. In fact, it's you're on that page and you're looking for someone to stake, and you're looking at those numbers and you're like, this guy looks good, but he could be crashing all day long. You don't even know.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's why they're kind of hiding the performance leaderboard a bit, not really factoring it into anything.
But I also think that, for 100, if we have 100 orchestrators, it's 100 streams, right? I wonder if you can get a grant. Like, really, how much would it cost in ETH to stream 100 streams continuously for a month, right? Like,
Well, couldn't you just use Livepeer Studio and their APIs for that? I'm sure they could give you a whole buttload of free minutes.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They're willing to do it for free.
If we could use Livepeer Studio as a way to say we're going to send the streams directly to their broadcasters and use our API token, just make sure the token has enough to run, however many minutes you want to transcode that month, and load it up with minutes, and then just fire it through. Like I told you guys, every week we did that Docker recording. Every week I log into my Livepeer Studio and I send that Docker stream, 2-hour stream through the network. Every week I do it on my free studio account. So, God bless any of you who get the free ticket on my behalf, but we're putting in work, baby.
Is it because you're limited to 2 hours a week?
No, I can run it a lot longer. It's when I'm sitting there and I'm like, I want to put some minutes on the network. I don't have any streams, and hopefully one of them goes to mine, but they always come from, I'm in the, Pennsylvania area. So they always go to New York. But I told Papa Bear, he was firing one up the other day where he sent a stream through LA. So again, if you can get some of these things running through, they're free tools. Why not use the minutes, man?
Can you specify what orchestrator you want to choose in Livepeer Studio?
No, that's all private to the Inc., right? So they're doing their stuff. That's why it's all random and whatever. But if you had your own broadcaster, you could. But in this particular case, we're using their API ingest to their broadcaster.
And the problem is Livepeer Inc. double transcodes everything. So what you're seeing might not actually be from an orchestrator.
That's right. Well, I didn't care what I'm seeing. I just want minutes. If they double transcode, that's fine. At least somebody's getting, 2 hours from Zodap every week. 100, sometimes twice a week if I can think about it. I want to automate it. Just start firing them through, man. Let 100 orcs fire 1,000 minutes a month. You'll see the minute numbers increase on those leaderboards. I know that.
The Livepeer Studio is a good test method if it gives you free a little bit of a free buffer there. I was thinking, maybe there's some way to build in. You'd have to be careful that people don't abuse it to get free streaming or something. But if there was a way to make sort of a special key or something that your test system could use to do that leaderboard, it would obviously require a change to the Livepeer release, but then that would allow it to run without actually charging anything, something like that. So those tests could run all the time and give that constant uptime measurement.
Maybe the only free way to do it now, at least free from a consumer side, is Studio. But you're right. If there is some way to do it, within the software, that's probably a good value add. But
well, we want to do it. We want to do it outside of Livepeer Inc., right? Like, utilize, like, I understand they can subsidize it, but like, so can a Livepeer grant. Like, they could grant us 10 grand, and like, that would get us a year's worth of streaming, right? So like, if we come up with a proper proposal on how to do this, especially if it's directed towards broadcasters, like helping broadcasters choose orchestrators, that we could just get that subsidized by the grant.
Well, if somebody wants to work on the proposal, I'd be more than willing to volunteer some of my services to help build whatever we're trying to build. But I tend to not like filing out those proposals and communicating with the team. Not that I can't do it. I just feel like there's such technical expertise that are going to be needed in some of those. Probably better to focus my energy on those areas. So if we could divide and conquer, I'd be more than willing to participate.
Well, I can write up a proposal. I'm more than interested in doing that. I like doing those kinds of things. Just create some milestones, a budget, an overview of what we're trying to accomplish. Because if we can create a community-led, open source broadcaster selection tool, helper tool, that'll get funded all day, right? And then the benefit is actually us orchestrators get that $10,000 whatever a year in free transcoding back to us anyway, because we're the ones winning the tickets. So, but I think what it would do is basically create a better leaderboard, one that's not just like a temporary, like little, like one that actually matters to someone like Jarvis, right? And then you actually get to really test the reliability of the network, like really actually get some true feedback on Livepeer, right?
Yeah, man.
That would be a big improvement from where we are today. I mean, the uptime measurement overall is important, and I think there may be even some things that we can't see from an orchestrator perspective. We have some errors in logs and things, and it's just hard to decipher it all the time. And a tool like that would help everyone.
Yeah, when you make changes in your infrastructure, like we said earlier, we put NGINX in front of our Livepeer app, and it looks like it's working, but unless we're able to put our broadcast through and see them play back, we don't know if it's actually working. So, and we got to wait all those hours for test streams to come through, and then they give sort of working results. So it's very hard to test anything.
And I think too, like, if you had a constant stream year round where people could see the stream, I think it gives more like insight into like Livepeer actually working, like Like if you're just, even if you're a delegator, you come across like something where you see an example of how well this network is working. Because again, the leaderboard is great, but like it doesn't show a live feed of how well this is working, or really like.
You know what I always like to compare it to, Titan, is you ever had somebody who was sick or whatever, they go to a doctor, right? And then you go in and it's like some of the new technology is they'll put like microscopic cameras and they'll like swallow it or inject it in your body and it'll like flow through whatever systems they want and it's taking pictures as it goes through. That's really what we want. We want something that we could say, all right, I'm going to drop this red marble down this tube and I'm going to wait for it to come out on the other end and see what happens. And like all the way through, you're testing every little tunnel it passes through. If it's Cloudflare's network, if it's DNS, if it's a broadcaster, if it's RTMP, if it's going to the GPU, like every touch point all the way through, you want to be able to get feedback so you know it's working. And this tool is the start of that kind of detail. You know what I mean? Like at least just get it working at a high level. Can you put something through the system and measure it? And then every touch point, you have to find ways to get measurements so that you can feed into this beast. And then you get a solid dashboard that says, yeah, here's the overall network. Here's an individual org and their performance as well.
Very cool. Okay, well, I think I'll just write up a proposal for this. And then get the funding for it first. Because then we can
circulate it with the group so we can make sure we target the right features and the right costs, right? Because this thing can balloon into something really big, but let's target something very specific. But then make sure that each person who's going to participate can get in and say, yep, I can do this or I can do that. So we have a clear message going into the submission, right?
Another thought I had as we were talking about that as far as testing, is like you mentioned the test net configuration, and that's something that I'm looking to set up pretty soon since I have got Geth and Arbitrum running on my own systems. It's not an issue with API usage and things like that. So it's definitely an opportunity. I think we can do more work in test net to improve, reliability overall in production.
Cool. Okay. Just writing down a little excerpt. Yeah, so like basically it's going to start, so this grant proposal will have something like, all orchestrators are different. Broadcasters have different needs. We want to assist broadcasters with the selection process. So we're going to build a leaderboard showing a current live stream, the past 30 days of reliability of each frame, and the price paid for that stream. And then maybe even a little tool at the bottom that like, you click and it outputs, or the orchestrators and or I don't know how fancy we want to get, but that's the idea. Does that make sense, or is this a bad idea?
I think that's a good characterization of some of the stuff we talked about.
Obviously, I'm not going to just submit this right away. I will probably get a lot of feedback from the community, because I think this can be so one of the most recent grants that went through. Someone obviously wanted to create developer toolkit, these kinds of things, and it was a very long and thought out proposal, and they ended up just denying it because they said, "Listen, this doesn't seem open source. This doesn't seem like it's good for the community. This seems like you're trying to make a for-profit product built on top, and so therefore we're not going to give a grant, right?" And so that seems to be a pretty big criteria for them. And I think this is just like a perfect open source project that we can build as a tool. And I think what it does is it not only helps broadcasters with the selection process, but it helps orchestrators actually see real results from their operations. Like, not just like, a performance. Like again, I don't want to harp too much on that performance board because it's been great. It's been without it we'd have nothing, right? So if we can just continue to improve upon that, that would be really helpful for us as the reliability of the network, right?
Well, that's what I was saying about scope, right? Like, let's look at where we are. Let's look at the end state where we want to go, where we think it should be, and then talk about the next incremental step. What takes us one step closer from where we are today to making it better, but not swallowing and boiling the whole ocean. You know what I mean? Like, we can't solve it all at once, but if we can get very specific on a tactical next step, then we can iterate quickly on multiple steps and get something quicker to market where, it might have taken longer if we had a big thought out plan, like this big grand idea that might never come to fruition. But if we focus on individual small pieces, we can get a lot more and quicker.
Cool. And the cost to this proposal would be 100 streams, 24 hours a day, 365 days.
1.5 million stake to everyone involved, so we can even the playing field. How about that?
I like that. Let's do that.
I'd like to suddenly be involved in whatever we're doing.
There you go. Cool. Well, I haven't introduced a couple of people that have joined us, so I will go through that now. Ryan with Nightnode, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic you might have?
I have no topic. My name is Ryan. I run Nightnode. I'm just here to listen and talk.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Elite Proxy, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hey, my name's John with Elite Encoder. Main topic on my mind today, just some Orchestrator item issues I've seen with like a lot of zero segments showing up, sort of like spikes in the streams. Just curious if anyone see anything like that. We actually went through and built a whole separate box and installed the exact same issues. Overall, we're doing really well, but just trying to even that out and thinking if those spikes are so high, we could be doing a lot more work. So yeah, that's the most topic for today, was just the zero segment errors. And it's been reported before with, and there's an open issue on the LPMS repository about it, but I'm not sure how prevalent it is or if it could be related to multiple root causes.
Are you seeing your server GPUs tapping out in streams?
No, we're not hitting like maximum utilization on those or anything.
It's just something that you're saying the spikes come in from Livepeer. And
it tends to happen like, sometimes you'll see a TLS error show up right when a stream begins. Yeah. They tend to happen either right when a stream begins or ends, the zero segments. And you might get, 8 of them in an hour, or you might get 2 in an hour.
Yeah, I've seen those TLS errors, and then you see the zero segments come in shortly after. So I also can attest to that kind of behavior. Authority, you've seen that too, right?
Yes, I have.
Very cool.
We probably discussed it before, but good topic for later, perhaps.
Thank you so much. It was I totally zoned out for a second. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Is that where I was? Oh
You
man.
good time?
Oh man. Up in Canada, we smoke that weed too much sometimes. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic? Jason, are you with us? I see your mic's not working.
Is he in Canada with you too? He's just taking a nap.
He's using a Singapore network.
It's gotta be it.
Are you with us?
Hello.
There you go.
Yeah, hi. Hey guys. Yeah, long time no see. I've been just busy with my life, Yeah, I'm Jason. I run Everest Node, and I've been running it for now more than a year. And the question for today is like the hardware uses for Arbitrum node. I think Mark Zucker is running one, and I'm trying to run my own again because I relied on the community for a while, but then I saw like I had so many issues, and I'm trying to run my own, and my hardware usage seems really weird. So just wanted to check with guys who are running Arbitrum node. That's
Yeah,
that's
Mike, maybe you can touch on where you're at with the whole node situation that you've been designing.
Sure, we could talk about that. Is there any other introductions you want to do, Titan, before we go down that rabbit hole?
Oh, thank you for letting me finish up. Thank you so much for joining us, Jason. Great to have you back. No, that was it for introductions. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
Well, I don't have access to the specs of the server, but I think if you look at Arbitrum in general, the real cost in terms of running it is not CPU or memory per se. I mean, obviously you need to have good amount of memory and good CPU usage, but I think it's all dependent on I/O, and I think a lot of it is based on I/O. I think Frank, can talk on the server he proposed. Like I had a server set up, one of the Contabo XLs, NVMe, but it was a single drive, and the drive performance was pretty decent. But when you start syncing blocks and you start starting up that VM, several hours to start up. So I got, a RAID 1, 2 NVMe drive, set up in a Hetzner VM. And what we saw was, 55-minute startup time, right? Versus 3-4 hour startup time, block syncing super fast. And I think if you could get, now again, this is always the trade-off, right? Is the cost, right, for your throughput. So with the 2 NVMEs, we were running for $80 a month versus the single NVMe was $40 a month or 35. So, you doubled the cost on the server, but you reduced the downtime significantly. I mean, to me, it made a lot of sense. But I posted in the Discord some of the statistics, right? So if you look at I/O statistics on the server when it's running, if you're not seeing tens of thousands of IOPS, the throughput for those drives, forget it. It's just going to be, it'll work. Like you can get it up after, a day or two of running, starting the VM, and then, maybe 5 days of syncing the application. But the problem is if you're running one node, when do you get a chance to take it down for a backup? When do you get to do maintenance on patching on the server? So you always got to run at least 2, and it just becomes so unwieldy if the hardware is slower. So I don't know if that provides any more context. I mean, we can get into some of the specific hardware specs. I can shoot that off to you, but anything you want to comment there?
For me, the issue has been the RAM uses. It's just like it's going up like every day by like 100 megabits, like MBs. So and now it's at like 32.8 gigs. I just wanted to know like.
Yeah, so are you running on the OS as a binary, or are you running in Docker containers?
It's just like outside normal.
Yeah, so again, Ryan may want to comment here as well. What we've seen is running on the binary on the OS, it tends to be piggish, if you will, in terms of its memory usage. It's significantly different memory behavior when you're running it inside of Docker. And I have these containers running for weeks now. And what I see is, depending on my settings and customization, because I was tweaking some of the cache settings and snapshot settings to see if I could reduce the speed. But what I found is default settings, right? If you have the default settings set, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there.
I guess what I can add running here. So granted, I've only been running.
Oh, memory usage. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead.
Alex. 1 second.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
The memory usage on the containers typically is like 19 or 21 gigabytes. Like it doesn't go higher. It'll fluctuate a little bit, but the container is very stable in terms of its footprint with the default setting. So 20 gigs is about what I've seen. But I had a server where I did some tweaking of the settings, just very small adjustments. And the one container VM took like 80 gigs of memory. So like, and it stayed at 80 gig, then it would drop down to 60 gig, then it would fly back up to 80 gig. So like larger memory footprints typically mean something's not optimized for your settings, your hardware. Because I think it's probably putting things in memory, and it just doesn't have the resource to do the work, and it just keeps collecting it over time. You're probably going to lead to an outage, but without monitoring tools like node exporter on the server, it's going to be hard to identify that. Go ahead, Alex.
No worries. Yeah, I've had similar experiences running on an AMD EPYC box, with almost a terabyte of memory. So I think I don't know what the Arbitrum node is written in, but it would be interesting to see like what that source. And I've just forgot because I just haven't looked at kind of their source in a while. But yeah, the only silver bullet I've found is I have an Intel Optane P5800X 800 gig SSD on loan, and that has drastically improved performance and removed a lot of prior I/O issues I was having. And what's curious is like clearly it's a fast SSD, but more of what Optane SSDs are optimized for is latency rather than raw IOPS. And yeah, curiously, I mean, obviously, if you put a $2,000 SSD in something, you would hope that it goes faster. But that's been
not always the case, Alex. So that's what I'm saying. A single device with the fastest speed will not outperform a RAID 6 device with 6 drives or 4 drives there that are maybe 1/3 the cost, right? Like you could still get faster throughput on a RAID 6 versus a single device, right? So again, it's you got to look at the workload and run it through and benchmark the throughput that you need. But I feel like with a RAID 2 is like, I mean, night and day. And if you go to RAID 6, I bet you can get that thing starting in 5 minutes, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you start running into like kernel limitations pretty quickly. But yeah, curiously, a sort of a latency optimized drive seemed to give quite a bit of benefit to the to running Arbitrum. But like you said, I think there's still a lot of optimization on their end for them to work through. And yeah, it'll be curious to see what they end up suggesting as like a reasonable and also I haven't had time to dig into this too much, but I've also been really fascinated with how the memory management and provisioning running in Docker is just better than running on bare metal. And usually it's like the opposite. Like usually you'll get all these bizarre sort of bracketing limitations in Docker. But it is curious that I mean, to your point, did you observe basically no difference in performance, or were there trade-offs performance-wise running a Docker? Because I would assume that if like it's just using less memory, like I'd assume that's probably just a limitation being placed on by Docker, saying like, yeah, only use this much. And was it performance same, or was it slower syncing? Or because obviously if you have a terabyte of RAM, like and a process that's going to use it, like it's kind of cool to see it get used. But if it's just
Well,
crashing,
that's what I was saying is I was testing the settings of Arbitrum to say, because there are cache settings and there are snapshot settings that you can go in and say when blocks are coming in, pull such an amount into memory and then only snapshot it at certain intervals. So you could go in and tweak it. And when I did that, I saw the Docker container. I had a 194 gigs of RAM on one server, and like 80 gigs was going to the Docker container. So it's not going to, it's a soft limit, if anything, right? Like the application really is going to drive the workload. But with Docker and containers in general, and again, this goes back to scaling, right? So Swarm and Kubernetes are tools that when running in Docker are virtualized versions of the real things, networks, hardware, disk drives, all of that. So you can go in and set resource constraints on those in those types of large scale deployments. So yes, Docker is going to give you that inherent behavior. But the point is, if you're running on Linux and you give it, if you run a process on the host and not Docker, the way the Linux operating system is going to do, it's going to stretch out, as I call it. It's going to leverage the hardware as it has it, and it will take and take and take until it runs out. But again, on a constrained environment, it will start to shuffle and manage and move things around. But when it doesn't have to, it's going to keep taking. So if you give it more memory and you're expecting it to taper off, it will not. Unless you set up some sort of memory or CPU quota, the OS is just going to keep stretching out as long as it has room to stretch.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I will have to go through the Mike's instructions for the containers because I don't think it's gonna stop because it started growing from 19, it's all the way up to 32, and I just bought like 64 gigs just to be sure, but now I'm pretty sure it's gonna go up to 64 at some point. So
Put it on a 32 gig memory server and watch what it does. It'll cap out at 20 gigs, 25 gigs, and it won't go any higher.
yeah, I'll have to because when I had like the 32, it went up like 28, 29, and then my server would crash because it didn't have enough RAM to like run the other services. So it
Then
would
that
just
means
like
your
crash.
IO is too slow. Your IO is absolutely too slow in that case. You can't run it like that. More memory is like a stopgap because your IO is too slow. The problem with Arbitrum is that it writes so much data on these blocks so frequently that you'll never catch up. The race condition.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think I got it.
something.
Like,
Go ahead, Jason.
no, I was just saying that like my NVMe is like quite old, and I think it's because of the storage problem maybe because it's probably doing maybe like 200 MBs up and down, and I don't think that's
Yeah,
enough for
that's
like
no
Arbitrum
good.
because
Yeah,
it's
if you're not at
yeah.
1,000, at least 1,000, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, and if they're consumer SSDs, you might just be saturating a cache. And SSDs are actually pretty complex. But yeah, I've been tempted with this one Epic box I have, to just try running Arbitrum with a RAM disk, just as a stupid experiment to see if that's actually better than this Intel Optane
I
drive.
wouldn't say that's stupid. That's actually a good idea. I don't have that hardware at my disposal. I would try that. That'd be interesting to see. Because if you could load the whole thing in memory, how big of a RAM disk do you have?
I'll let you. Well, I think I have a friend who could ironically bring some of his RAM over, and I think at that point I could probably have 1.3 terabytes of RAM on a single box.
Good
Oh,
lord.
wow.
Now
Holy
granted, they're
crap.
older
That's
Epic, so
awesome.
like I wish I had like a 75 F3 to try this with. But you know,
That's going to work nicely, I have a feeling.
yeah, I mean it's going to be really depressing if like at some point it's like, yeah, like to run an Arbitrum node, all you need is 1.3 terabytes of RAM and
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
4
Well,
U's
look,
of
though, I said it's a trade-off. Everything we're going to do at scale is going to be a trade-off. If I can run 5 nodes cheaply and bring them up in 50 minutes, I think that's a scalable solution that, you can guarantee 99.99% uptime, and you can do it at an affordable hardware cost. And again, as hardware evolves, you can swap out old and bring in new, and but it's got to be a cluster of smaller nodes running. If you have a big guy running and he goes down, you're pretty much toast. And at a minimum, with Livepeer, you can't run one Arbitrum node in Germany and expect it to work in Singapore and in the US. Like, I'll show you some of the statistics from the latency scores across the geolocations, and the block polling problem gets significantly worse when you add latency from your infrastructure to the mix. So again, getting it to work is one part, but then also serving those nodes across the geography becomes the bigger problem. So those who run their own node, be wary.
Okay, but yeah, I can do that and report back. That'll be interesting.
I think we put a nice fork into that horse. What do you say, Jason? Are you satisfied?
I think I am. Maybe yeah, I'll have to test with a better like a storage option, which has a really good input output. But then I can like let you know, guys, if there is any improvement, because I think
If
like
you
it
get
would be
Docker
interesting to.
installed on that server, shoot me a DM and I'll send you the 2 stack YAML files you'll need to bring up Arbitrum and/or Geth, and then you can benchmark it from there for yourself.
Yeah, yep, we could do that.
Oh, and okay,
I'll-
I feel like an idiot, but Nitro is written in Go, and I actually I have a friend at Google I could maybe ask about like the exploded, like the bloating memory behavior with running on bare metal. But
Yeah, that
That'd
would
be
be.
sweet to know.
Yeah.
for sure.
And they have a friend at Google.
I wish I had a friend at Google. Okay, great. Any other topics we want to cover? Late proxy, I don't know if we got to your topic, but I didn't write it down, so I don't remember what it was. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, we were just, it was around the zero segments issue, and I think we've discussed it before, so it's just more of a quick chat around what other people are seeing with that. Like how frequent does it seem to correlate with any kind of like large spikes in streams? That's what I've been seeing for the past, I know almost since I've got got the tight node grant and started seeing a lot more traffic come in. Um, and as soon as we stabilized our RPC situation, we're seeing, it's running really great consistently, but you have these spikes where we might go from like 2 or 3 streams up to 8 or 10, and it drops right back down in a few minutes.
What version of Livepeer are you running?
The 0.5.31. We're not
Yeah.
on 3.2 yet.
Yeah, well, one thing I noticed is that on the 2.9 release was a lot more stable in this regard. Like you didn't see that stuff. So I don't know if you feel like backporting or, downgrading a little to test to see, but I thought the issue happened more when I went to the 3X version and I tested, for a while I left production in at, 0.29 and everything seemed fine. And we have a test environment where we were running the the .32 version. And, I want the max the max face value patch, but at the same time, I wonder if some of these other errors I'm seeing are worth it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. You got to look at it and see if the 2.9 works for you, but you won't be able to use the max face value fix. So I don't know if that matters, but just be curious to see if you've downgraded, do those problems go away?
That's a good idea. I may give that a try because the release timeline is pretty close to when I started seeing it. I'm not running on the 3.2 that has that patch because for some reason we just didn't get any tickets on a regular schedule like we kind of expect. I know it's very probabilistic micro payment wise, but we just went back down to the 3.1 version because I wasn't too interested in face value changing at the moment. So yeah,
then I would
3.1's where
say
we're
go
seeing
back
that.
to 2.9.
Yeah,
I would go
2.9.
back to 2.9. In fact, there was a fix in 3.2 for zero segments on the 3.1 release that came out. It was like I think Papa Bear filed it, but they did like a patch for it in 3.2. So it might be better on 3.2, but I don't know because I still see it on 3.2. But 2.9, I didn't see it, or very rarely did I see it.
Definitely, we'll take a look at that. That's sad because the 3.0 version also has the NetInt support, which we haven't really started using yet. But now that we've got separate boxes and we're looking at setting up testnet, I'm definitely looking to play around with NetInt later on.
And I can't give you any feedback on the 3.0 version because they didn't build a Docker image for that version. So I was never able to test it. And I only run Docker in production.
Yeah, the notes say that there was an issue in 3.0 related to 2.9, or there's an issue in 3.0 that was not in 2.9. So maybe that's it. I'll give it a try. I mean, it's a lot of version numbers back. But if that's working for a lot of people, then that may be what we go with for a little while and see if it helps.
From a core protocol, there's no major fixes there, right? It was just a bunch of small defects. So I think if you're on 2.9, the other part I see with the 3X version is when my server starts the GPU, there's like a whole bunch of format errors that come in now that weren't there in 2.9 when I start. So I don't know if it's related either, but just food for thought.
Yondon had mentioned that those can be ignored.
Question. Has anybody on the new versions seen anything with like a memory leak? I'm running two different clients on one of the servers, and it's pulling like 10 to 15 gigs of RAM. And if you reboot them, it drops back down. But if you keep it up for a few hours, it goes back up.
Livepeer.
Livepeer.
Whoa. I don't think
Yeah,
I've seen that. I'm gonna go back and take a look at some of my charts just to confirm, though.
yeah. I think you sent over the performance on some of yours, and it was pretty low and
Oh yeah,
consistent.
yeah.
But mine's basically just like an up, a nonstop scaling chart
Take
of being taken up. Yeah, and then once I
that.
reboot
I
it,
think
it goes
I,
back.
I think I had a similar like problem with one of my servers, but it was like I was transcoding with a CPU and it would just like fill up like the RAM and then it would crash. But that was like transcoding with the CPU, so maybe like it's not the same issue, but you might want to check again.
Actually, good point.
Well,
I'm gonna
check
look.
your Nvidia patch. Make sure that that's working. You didn't inadvertently update your driver, because I saw not the memory, but I saw like nodes crashing. I had a server reboot on a patch, and it actually upgraded Nvidia as well. And then things started to go haywire, but I was able to find it and fix it. So it's a good point too, Jason.
That's a good point. Thank you. Actually, you know what? I think you might have a point. I think I might be missing a flag. Hopefully not.
Well, the scary part was the node rebooted, and then when it came back up, it said it's not patched, and it was throwing errors. And then I tried to patch it with the patch file that I had downloaded. It said unsupported version. So I like freaked out, thinking like, "Oh my god, how am I gonna roll this back and like get the right version?" Like it was a mess. But then I went to the GitHub repo, and they had already patched that version, the newest one. So I was like, "All right, these people are pretty good on that patch."
And sometimes like when the patch is not there exactly, I just change just copy the same code for the last one and create a new one with the version name at the end of the list when you edit the file. Sometimes
Oh
it
wow.
works, sometimes it doesn't. Like
Wow, that's that Titan Node Ninja stuff right there, man.
like it has worked maybe a couple of times for me when there was not the latest patch from the GitHub, but like sometimes it just says it doesn't support.
There was a chat where I forget, I think it was Ryan. Somebody had posted like a way to mark your NVIDIA driver on Linux so that it doesn't auto update. And I think that I applied that. I didn't apply it to that server. That's why it bit me. But as in a future reference, it might be better to just mark your NVIDIA driver to not update ever, unless they come out with a supported version. Then you can apply it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, you could. It's like a apt get hold or something like that.
Yeah, that's critical. Thanks for the reminder. Just set up a new box and you put that on there.
Yeah, that's what
Unless
happened to
you're
me. I
running,
spun up a new node, and then it just bit me. And when the update came, I was like, "Yo, why did the server go down all of a sudden? Oh, auto updated. Oh crap,
yeah,
patch the
Yeah,
driver.
that was a
Go."
massive headache early on when none of us knew how to do that, and every now and then the server would just change the drivers,
yep,
and we would go into panic mode. Like, what the hell is going on? Or GPU's failing? What the hell?
yeah. Unless you're running like an RTX series, that's not gonna like or RTX 4000. That doesn't need to be patched. But other than that,
How are the performance of transcoding on the 4000? I've actually got
you
one,
get like
but
14 max streams before you cap out. Performance otherwise is pretty good. Transcoding time is about the same as like a 1070 though. I think the only and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it has the ability, if we were to ever do like AI or machine learning, it should be better suited for that.
oh, that's
Yeah,
good to know.
the performance on the 4000, at least the ones I've used, seem to be a little inconsistent, and the transcoding times definitely seem higher than the 1070 by double or more from what I've seen.
You guys are
Well,
running
never.
these things in your production fleet.
Chicago Tensodoc has a 4000.
Yeah, I don't think we
Oh,
are on a shared one anymore, right? I think we're 1070s on everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so have you seen the 4000 tap out in Chicago? A
Yes.
single one? Oh, and is there a particular log that you get from that? I want to see that because I haven't been looking for that. That might be happening to me in Chicago.
What do you mean? Like, what are you trying to look for?
Like, is there an error that happens in the log that's going to say that it's maxed out? Like, how do you know that
Uh,
it reaches its limit?
well,
The
you
server
set the max
crash?
streams, right? So
Yeah, I
it
know,
won't.
but if my number's higher than what the card is able to do, then what happens?
Oh well, yeah, the GPU will probably crash. You'll tap out your memory or something.
So something's going to blow up and the server's going to go down?
I
Oh
mean, I
yeah,
think what you
if
would see, you would
go
see like
ahead,
a
Mike.
slowdown of transcoding speed, right? Usually, because you can benchmark that really high if you want to. It might make it heat
True.
up, but it will keep running. Just will run
Yeah.
Okay.
behind real time.
I'll
I'll lower it. I didn't realize that it would tap out at that low of a number.
I've had a GPU actually live run out of memory. Like I had 25 streams on a 1660 live, and it just threw an out of memory error, crashed all the streams, and then you
That's
can.
not
That I don't want. That I don't want.
Back when we would get lots of streams as a orchestrator, yeah, it was like 25 streams on a 1660, and I was like, woo! And then it just like out of memory, crashed, all my streams left. I just like restart it at like 23, and it would just like max out at 23, crash. It was like my original benchmarking was like live production. I was like, oh, this is a cool fun thing. And then those days are long gone, but
The dark ages.
yeah. The dark ages when there was only like actually 3 people transcoding on this whole network. And you'd max out a 1660 super on like a Monday.
I call it the Renaissance age, man. That was a new day.
Yeah, man. I was getting streams from Singapore trying to real time, like at hold. Like, they're just like coming all the way to Canada. They're like, oh man, let's go. But now
we're in the Industrial Revolution now, man. We're all pumping out coal to get these streams, dude.
Well,
You,
I mean,
you got Ben who's over there being like, if I could just get that 0.01 on his performance.
dude, like,
That's right.
I remember I went from 6 to 7, and I was like, oh, sweet, I'm almost number 1. And when I hit 7.3, I was like, oh, I'm number 1 on the leaderboard. Awesome. And like, it's like just above real time. And now people are like 9.98. They're like, oh, I just need to get that one more. Like,
Nah, I'd give it up on that one. Yeah, let those guys miserly find that millisecond, half a sub-second difference, you know. And when they figure it out, I'll go set up it the same way.
Yeah. What I'll do is I see some new people joined us here. I'll do some more introductions, and we'll continue on. Marco, I see you've joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself on a topic you might have?
Hi everyone, I'm Marco. I work for Miss Server and run the Captain Chat Orchestrator. And I actually had 2 topics if we have time, but let's start with the first one, because Chase from the team, he just shared in the internal chat a link that June Analytics now supports Arbitrum. And I don't know if everyone here knows June Analytics, but it's a website where you can create dashboards based on blockchain data. So it's pretty useful maybe. Maybe we can think of something to do here. And the other one was maybe we could talk about co-hosting at a data center, because I heard you did that, Titan Note. And I was also looking to do co-hosting at a data center with someone.
June Analytics, and what did you say? Co-locating at a data center?
Yeah.
Locating at a data center. Yeah. I mean, I kind of do that a little bit. Not really though. I'm sure other people have better experience with that, with the co-location thing. But yeah, no, those are some good topics. I think we'll jump into that just after introductions here. So thank you so much for joining us. And those are good topics. I see Kult, Web3 Eddie. Would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Hi, Tony here. From Web3 Eddie. We're just like an education platform that's kind of trying to use Livepeer. So the topic I have, I don't know whether this is the right cooler to be standing at, but it's around sort of like smart contract billing. Because the thing is that we want to have like live streams which are done dynamically on chain, or at least triggered, managed by the chain, by contracts on the chain. Yeah, okay, that's right what you're saying. And so it's sort of like any gotchas which we need to watch out for, because we want to have quite a lot of sort of students on the downside and also educators on the upside. and yeah, basically with Livepeer noobs. So yeah, anything you guys can share, most welcome. Thank you.
Very cool. I see you're new. I don't think I've met you before, so on behalf of the Livepeer community, welcome, and thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
When you say smart contract billing, well, you know what? I'll come around to that topic just after I finish introduction. So we'll
Sure.
definitely jump
Thank
into
you.
that, and I can't wait to answer some of your questions. Great, Fort Koonsman, I see you've joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself at a topic?
Hey there, Titan. Yeah, how y'all doing today? This is Joey with the Fort Koonsman node. I run a small transcoding pool with Karalak. You probably see him on the Discords. I'm also the developer of the community Arbitrum node. So any questions about that can be directed to me. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, cool. Well, we got 3 topics here, and we got about 20 minutes left. So let's hop into those. Okay, we'll start with just from the top here. Marco, you talked about Dune Analytics supporting Arbitrum. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? When they started doing that, and what you see the future of that looking like?
Well, so they started supporting Arbitrum, I think today or something. I'm not completely sure. And I've never actually used it before myself, but I've seen some cool dashboards on there. Basically, you can just graph anything like bond events, unbound events, tickets being sent. It was something which I wanted to add to my own website, but it's very difficult. So it's pretty exciting, maybe. I don't know. I haven't really looked too much into it myself, but maybe someone does that.
Definitely. I've seen Yondon use Dune Analytics for other Livepeer related stuff. So I think that's really cool. I think that was...
Yeah, I think you're in uncharted territory, my friend.
Yeah, and that
Folks
was...
aren't out on that fringe out there yet.
Yeah, and that was back on mainnet, so I don't know how Arbitrum looks, but... Yeah, Dune looks pretty cool. I know we tried to use Scout.cool in the past, but that just completely broke eventually, or someone just didn't keep paying the subscription. I don't know what happened, but I think Dune would be a better option for those kind of things, for dashboards and stuff. And Marco, I like your current dashboard, and yeah, if you can implement Dune in there, that'd be even cooler.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have experience with Dune Analytics specifically? Fair enough. Okay, next topic, co-locating data and data centers. Marco, what was your question about co-location, and what are your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, so I currently rent a couple of VMs. They're all TensorLog, of course. And what you get is a pretty expensive virtual machine, and you get a GPU which you can use yourself. So you get a fancy RTX card. Well, an old 1070 will do much better, right? And so Pan Node came with the idea of just co-locating at data centers. And I'm just curious if anyone else have tried it, because as it looks like, from my calculations, you can maybe like put 4 P2000s in a single machine and rent a 4U slot, and it will just about make it in terms of power draw. And it seems like a pretty cheap alternative to renting all these machines all over the world to me. But I haven't tried it. We're going to rent one in Eastern US for sure, but we have to try it first.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I think that's also uncharted territory. I think, Titan, you looked into co-location, right? But you never pulled the trigger?
Yeah, so my issue was the cost of each unit that they were charging and the amount of power you got. So like, and the amount of space you had. Like, so I have a friend that is in IT for like the city, and like deals with rack space all the time and just servers in general. And I was like, yo, I want to fit GPUs into 1 unit, rack spaces, like blah, blah, blah. Let's price it out. So we spent some time building it, and like you can get certain, like the problem came down to just power. Like, if you want any Nvidia card, they just draw a lot compared to how much kind of power you get. Because and then so you could fit like 4 GPUs into 1 unit rack space, right? Like you could. But again, your power draw was like way more than they would allow.
Yeah, no, but like from what I've seen, usually when you rent a space for 4 UKs, you get 3 amps at 208 volt, which is like 600 watt at least. And a P2000 takes 70 watts at full load, and at idle it's like 20 watts. So I thought it could be pretty feasible to just put in a pretty powerful server in there, and spin up a VM for every orchestrator that wants to join in, right? And there's like 4 video cards in there, but yeah, you have to be very careful about power users, also for the CPU, of course, and yeah.
Yeah, so the P2000. Yeah, but you need to rent four units, right?
Yeah, 1 4 UKs. Maybe you could fit them into two UKs as well if you were very creative with risers or something. But I know you usually get more power with the 4 UKs as well. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but then but the price. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. Like, and I'm just seeing these Quattro P2000s. They're going for about $1,000 bucks.
An example, they're very cheap old Quattro cards. I think you can get similar Quattros or other old server grade Nvidia cards.
Yeah. So basically, I think my hang up was around the cost of the constant cost. It was something like you had to spend, I don't know, $160 a month, and that was just for the space, and then you had to buy the equipment, and you had to depreciate that over 4 years, and blah 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 blah, and then you had to put them into certain. That was my original actually idea for the pool, was just to do co-locating. But I think the problem was you were still, like the problem is just the constant cost. Like I run a business outside of Livepeer, obviously, and like there's your kind of like a burn rate, or like a your capital efficiency, or your overhead. And when your overhead is high, it makes it very hard to run a business, because you for the long term. And when you have overhead, like, you've got to keep that, you got to maintain it. And so if you have 4 rack spaces around the world, say you're outputting $1,000 a month. Well, like, currently at the current transcoding amounts, like, it's just really hard to maintain that, right? And if you're in Livepeer, you got to be in it for the long haul. You got to be in this thing for, in my opinion, 5 to 10 years before you really start seeing scalability, like mass adoption of any kind. So you got to protect yourself from downside up until then. And then my whole thesis was, well, people are willing to transcode at their house, residential house, for $30 a month, and just have it on when they feel like it. And that's just like a lot cheaper than a co-locating, where they're trying to make profit off of you locating. So I went with the residential at home transcoder pool approach for that reason. So it's definitely possible. I think the co-locating thing, in my opinion, is going to be those high reliability, high efficiency, high priced orchestrators on the network that cater towards people like Jarvis, who need 99.98% uptime. They want high quality. I think there's definitely room for that. But just for my approach on scaling and longevity, I decided to stay away from that. But by all means,
I agree that they're pretty expensive, and like for one entity to do it all by themselves, it will be pretty difficult, because you also have to run like all the software on it to support other people as well. But like, if you can share one machine, you can spin up like 4 different virtual machines, one for each orchestrator. You can split the cost by 4 as well. So yeah, that was the idea behind it.
Well, it's a good idea. I just don't think anyone here has tested it yet. I think it's a great idea. It was my original idea for how I wanted to do it, but again, I just looked at the overhead and I decided I didn't want to take on that, because you also have to often sign a contract with these guys that you want to keep it in there first. Like, you're locking into something that's certain for them and really uncertain for you, and you just got to be really careful with new technologies. That's my only cautionary tale. I know like we've rented a VM in Singapore, and a bunch of orchestrators are all piling on onto the one VM. So
Hey, it's a party in Singapore.
it's a party in Singapore, man. So if you set up a co-location and you wanted to subsidize the cost, just go to every orchestrator and ask them to like, if you want to use a piece of your co-location, we'd all chip in and probably use it. So that's one way to subsidize the cost.
Yeah, so I think we're just going to try it out first. Yeah, get maybe a 2 use case, see if it works, and if it does, it's a good thing to put more effort into. And also, I will put a server in my own home, of course. Maybe I can co-host that as well, but we'll see.
Now, where I thought if everybody's using TensorDoc, right, and everyone's spinning up these VMs on these servers, there's an opportunity where you can say, how many orcs can I pull together? How many GPUs would I need to pull all those orcs together that are currently on TensorDoc and broker one deal at a larger discount at scale, and then put the access control in place so that each orc can deploy their app but not interfere or interact with anyone else. I think that to me sounds like a market where, you can reduce the overall cost for all orchestrators by pulling together those GPUs at a discount and again, you don't even have to use just TensorDoc. If you have others, you can swap them out as you see fit. But I think that's probably the scalable approach when you look at, how quickly can you get a GPU online. TensorDoc can turn them on in a matter of minutes, right? So just more thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely less setup, but behind the scenes, it's all the same thing, right? Whether TensorDoc manages all the VMs, or you host your own
That's right.
virtual servers at the data center, but it's definitely much more work.
Yeah, I would
Right.
also.
You're paying what TensorDoc's doing, right? You're building what TensorDoc already built, and they have already, done the heavy lifting. I'm sure if you tap into their infrastructure team, they'll give you all the horror stories.
The just a reminder, Marco, though, just be careful. I make sure you benchmark a P2000 first. I don't know if I have it on my list of benchmarks, but
I have it on my home server right now.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so make sure that it can keep real time and that it's you're happy with its speed and everything. But if it is, then by all means, like that's, I would highly recommend testing that out and reporting back to the community. I think it would be really interesting to see. And this comes down to the conversation we had earlier. Like, all orchestrators are different, and that's a good thing. Because then you're gonna get different price. Like Marco's orchestrator is gonna be twice as expensive as Titan Nodes, but like Titan Nodes or pool of transcoders are in their mom's basement and like they're gaming while they're transcoding, and like you're gonna be missing some frames, and like maybe it's just gonna be way more unreliable, but like that doesn't matter if you're transcoding mostly still images of like people drawing or people AFK at their computer, right? But for the Swiss national TV station, like, you might want to go with Marco, like, so I think there's just an opportunity to really decide what you want to stand for and then bring that to the table, right? So
you should probably go to Authority or something. I think he's first right now on the leaderboard.
He's got the secret sauce, that's for sure.
yeah.
Well, none of that's going to matter if a broadcaster comes in that doesn't use Livepeer ingest, right?
No.
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing is, how far flung are you? Like, I'm hoping that Titan Node, when we get more distributed, like, it'll be very easy for, transcoders at home to spin up nodes in the Congo district of Africa, or the Central or South Americas, or all these like remote areas where shipping co-locating GPUs is not maybe as easy, right? But you can get people again at their gaming computers on their laptops at home to transcode in a pool setting, right? So
I've been thinking about that a little over the past few days, because I that was it Hetzler, that's in Germany. I was
Hetzner,
looking at their
yeah.
Hetzner, looking at their pricing, and I thought to myself, there's a couple of countries in Europe. I know Croatia, I don't think they're on the euro. There may be some countries that have a really great exchange rate, and you may be able to kind of factor that in and get a cheaper rate. Something to consider.
Yeah, Livepeer is an open marketplace, so it makes it so much more powerful than just going to Google or going to Amazon and having them top-down approach everything. It's very exciting. I'm going to move on, though. I'm going to move on to Web3 Eddie's topic here, which is about smart contract billing. Web3 Eddie, tell us about what you're trying to accomplish, and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so basically what it is that we are trying to create a decentralized education platform, which allows you to do a lot of exciting things, such as, for example, mint your courses, as well as put in a bit of DeFi with respect to school fees. But with respect to Livepeer, the thing is that some of our courses have like live events incorporated with them. So it's like, on Udemy, it's like, you're just going to see a series of videos. But what we want to do is we want to have it so that, in your course, you may have like several videos, and then the thing is that you actually go to the live event, which you actually have to attend as part of that course if you want to get that accreditation. And so the thing is that it becomes a bit of an interesting thing with respect to sort of like how we can bill for that, because the idea is to make it an open, permissionless, totally Web3 kind of thing. So we don't even know who's there. We just know that we've got a whole bunch of educators, we've got a whole bunch of students, and they're doing a whole load of stuff on our platform, and they're streaming and broadcasting, and we're using Livepeer to do it. But it's sort of like trying to get an understanding in terms of sort of like how the billing would work, because it's like on my course, my student's going to pay me maybe $30, right? Okay. And so the thing is that, I'm going to have to sort of like pay the network only when my student is watching a live stream, I guess, because if it's, I'm taking it that if it's just a download, it doesn't matter too much. Yeah. And then it's sort of like how would we sort of like think about building that with respect to the network? So would it just be that we've got a smart contract which talks to the network and basically says, okay, network, we're about to do some streaming, here's a whole bunch of money, and then, let our stream go? Or what? How do we think about this? This is the question.
So, are you familiar with how Livepeer currently bills for its services?
So from what I understand, it's like I got to set up a node, and then the thing is that the node has a wallet attached to it, and then the thing is I kind of credit the wallet. But the idea is that I don't want to have a wallet. I don't want to have a node. I don't want to have anything. I want to basically have this all running on chain, like 99.99999% of it all running on chain, all totally decentralized. And we just got like analytics which are using things like Dune and what's that other one? Covalent and stuff like that, to sort of like monitor what's going on. But in terms of having any infrastructure of any description beyond maybe a Fleek account for hosting the front end, we've got nothing. That's the idea.
All right. So obviously you have to pay for the transcoding service. I'm assuming you'll also need a decentralized network, a CDN service, right, to distribute the content, right?
Yes. So CDN, we're kind of using IPFS for that. So it's sort of like the bulk of the course content is uploaded. So all the tech stuff is all uploaded into IPFS, and then we do some smart contract JavaScript wizardry to basically package it so that we can read it again. And then the thing is, the miracle and the magic is now when we're having these lives, because it's trying to get like, I don't know whether there's a pre-existing smart contract framework which sort of manages my stream IDs. And then sort of like I can ascribe some sort of billing to those stream IDs when those stream IDs are in use and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's kind of like where we start, sort of like jumping into the Pacific Ocean.
Well,
this isn't the Atlantic here.
Very, very good. Have you heard of a media network by chance?
Media network? No.
So they're a CDN service. So they're the content delivery network, and they work with IPFS and Livepeer. And so what it does is you have IPFS that stores the file, media network, I guess that's for downloaded stuff. If you're live streaming, it goes, first thing you do is you live stream into Livepeer. It transcodes the content. Media network then distributes it to its content delivery network so that anyone around the world can watch it. And then a copy of that goes to IPFS, which can be stored for later viewing, right? So those are like the three protocols that I would say work really well together. And then as for billing, what you would do is you'd have to create a Livepeer node, which is a broadcaster node. You would have to create, so that's like an account, if you will. You'd have to create a media network account, right? Because you have to pay for that as well. And then you'd have to create, I guess, an IPFS pin, or in a way. And so then you could create a smart contract where every student that decides to pay the $30, 10% of that gets distributed to the Livepeer network account, the media network account, and the IPFS pinning account. And that would pay for the infrastructure, because the Livepeer transcoding, what it is you have to put in a reserve, like a deposit. And then obviously when that deposit runs out, then it stops transcoding. But if you have continuous smart contracts topping up that account through payments, then that will just continue to keep operating. So that's one way of doing it.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Okay. It might be quite complicated.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's already getting very exciting, because the thing is that we want to basically just pay for everything in crypto, right? Because the idea is that basically our students are paying in crypto. So as soon as their crypto comes in, we basically just divide everything across the entire cost base. And so your educator is going to get his cut with no further costs besides, of course, the eternal taxation that we all have to pay. But that's their problem. But the thing is, in terms of the infrastructure and in terms of it running and in terms of providing a smooth service, they don't have to worry about that. They can just say, oh yeah, I'm going to stream now. And then they just stream, because the thing is that, the money's already been paid and the money's already kind of there.
So 10, it's almost like an infrastructure cost bill, right? You just 10% of every payment that a student makes goes towards, it literally just gets deposited, depending on what you get paid in, it uses an AMM or Uniswap. So if they pay in whatever, let's just say USDC, 3.3% of that gets converted into ETH, gets put into the Livepeer wallet. So that is now paying for the transcoding. 3.3% is put into the CDN network, which is media network. And then 3.3% is put into file. Or, obviously you have to distribute it accordingly. Livepeer is going to be your cheapest of all three of those, I think. Right? So Livepeer will be 1%, media network will be 6%, and Filecoin will be 3%. Something like that, right?
Okay. No, that sounds cool. Yeah. And then I guess one question before you guys sort of wrap up, because I know we're.
Can I ask a question quickly before I just along the same topic? It sounds to me like you're asking for a solution more than you are, like you really are looking to say, is there some provider out there that does this now where I can just sign up and start using the service? Whereas I think what Titan's describing is, you taking each of these individual building blocks and putting them together yourself. So are you looking to just use something that exists or build something new? Or are you taking these building blocks and kind of assembling your own solution? Like, what are your thoughts on that? It's like you don't want to run any of this stuff, but you want to just get something.
Yeah, so Mike, you're absolutely right. In terms of building, the build is kind of like, okay, fine, we've just been given $10 million and we're gonna have to do a data center because the thing is we need to scale, etc. The idea is that we really want to try and use, so we're using Livepeer Studio for the API stuff, because the thing is they've got the node, but the thing is that we're not too sure about their billing, because the thing is that they don't have anything that says, oh, you just need to talk to this smart contract and you bill and everything will be fine. You know what I'm saying? And then we can sort of work out a model of how we put enough money in there. So it's kind of like looking like, sort of like how we navigate that. Because for the platform, the idea is really that we want this totally decentralized, like 100% if we can get it. Totally decentralized, no infrastructure. And if we do have to provide infrastructure, it will probably take Titan's approach. And then the thing is that, but the thing is because we've got a shed load of money, we've got 1 million students, we got a heck of a lot of educators. And the thing is we're kind of having scaling limits, which was my last question, which is really, what's the most number of streams that we've seen on the network in, let's say, like a 2-hour period? Is it like 1 million streams? Is it like 1 billion streams? Is it
for Livepeer specifically?
Yes. I'm trying to understand, because the thing is that in terms of the student count we're trying to get to, right? We're trying to get to about 1 million students at the end of our first year. So it's kind of like, if I have to start now thinking about hardware, because it's kind of like, oh, we haven't seen that happening, well, at least yet, or like soon. The thing is that I want to be thinking about that early, because this is such a complicated thing to do, but it's exciting.
So we don't, and maybe maybe I should let Alex talk about this, but like we don't really have we have a very big supply compared to demand, right? Like we are most orchestrators, especially some of those on the lower end of stake, are probably sitting at 0 to 1 streams, when they could be sitting, like, for example, I have like 120 stream capacity for myself, and that's just because I've just stopped expanding it. But I could if we needed to, right? Most people have the ability to scale up, but just don't because of the demand there, right? So if you were to come in with a large capacity for demand, most people would be able to adjust to that as is. And I think and maybe Alex or somebody else can speak to this, but I believe in the past I've seen a graph where it was like a couple thousand streams max, maybe, but maybe other people could speak to that better.
Yeah, I think it's right to think that there's lots of unused upside. Like even if you were to poll against every GPU that's deployed on Livepeer, and then make the assumption that for every GPU, if you max like as many streams as they could handle, and make the assumption that that these orchestrators also have the bandwidth to do that, I would conservatively say you could probably multiply the current demand probably by like 10 or 12. And of course, by region and in terms of latency, there's a huge variance what that would turn out to be. But I think if you showed that there was demand, or if you came in and gave a portion of your streaming to what's cool with Livepeer, and we saw this with like the huge uptick in streams in the latter end of the L1, like backing up against the L2 transition. Scaling, it happened pretty quickly. Like people were like, oh, like wow, there's way more throughput now. Why don't I go? I'll go plug in 3 more GPUs, or I'll go rent GPUs. So it's early to tell how quick that is, but what's cool is the community is pretty responsive, and what we've seen so far is that the scaling is really there. Regarding your payments questions, these are all like fantastic questions, and I can't go into too much detail, but the notion of payment hooks or more programmatic and I guess hands-off forms of paying for streams is something that is actually actively being worked on. And within the next 2 quarters, like the first version of kind of rethinking how we do payments for streams is coming up. So if you have any specific questions or specific asks, like I sent you a friend request, but definitely feel free to send those my way, and I can socialize those internally. Because one thing, like one user set that's hard to gauge or poll are the people who are submitting streams and people who are looking for other forms of like paying for things, right? And I totally understand that being a friction point, right? Because you're saying, you know, I want there's going to be a variance in how we're streaming, and to have to think in like the back of my head or in infrastructure somewhere, like, well, did we pay up the Livepeer node? Like, did we top up that card or that wallet? That's, you know, something that ideally customers wouldn't have to think about too much. But obviously, once you think about like region and changes in like just how you would estimate your throughput or like how many viewers you'd have, it's a pretty complex problem. But I think we have some pretty cool initial ways of thinking about these in terms of like payments hooks. But yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing some like, you know, some even more specific questions or some like larger like high level asks. And yeah, totally support like what you've been saying in over like the last 30 minutes.
Alex,
Thank you very much.
and Alex, maybe you can also, maybe you can answer this for me. For Cool It, you're looking to get to a million students, right? However, I believe in the case of how we do it with like Picardo, it's not like if there's 10,000 students or 10,000 people watching a stream, you're not doing 10,000 different transcoding sessions, right? It's based off the broadcaster or the person that's running that stream themselves, right? So we're doing one for that person, then that goes out to say 100 people.
I believe so. It quickly becomes more of a networking question, but yeah, generally, if you assume that the latency geographically assumes that like that set of people is closest to a given orchestrator or an edge that that orchestrator is providing, yeah, generally speaking, like for assuming that it's all the same quality, like say you have a bunch of people on an iPhone and it's like a 720p stream, like per quality and then per like latency to an edge, generally speaking, that's like in theory that should only be done once, and then it's just duplicated, you know, on the networking side where you're just like, you know, sending that to multiple people.
Yeah, so cool. If that makes sense, then it wouldn't be like you wouldn't be picking up and paying for a million streams if you're getting a million people watching at the same time. Right.
That might be different. Like from a payment side, in terms of like content delivery, I'm not sure about that, but I would assume you're probably still paying. Yeah, I just don't know. I can ask about that.
Yeah, that would be good to get some kind of clarity on there, especially for people incoming, right, that are looking at their financial costs or what the burden might be.
Of course.
Eddie, I just linked in the water cooler chat, which is 2 channels above this, just media network and what they are, and then there's also on that docs page there's an integration with Livepeer and IPFS, because just want to confirm that like when you say a million students, that's probably more of a content delivery issue than it is a transcoding issue, because I mean, how many teachers do you have streaming? That like
well, the goal is to sort of like have like for that million students, we're looking at probably about 10,000 educators.
Right. So that
very different.
Yeah. So the 10,000 streams, which is the 10,000 educators, that would be the demand on Livepeer, because we only transcode the stream once, and then the content delivery network sends it out to your million students. So that would be a 10,000 load on us, which we could handle today, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's comforting.
So
that's really helpful. Thank you.
But yeah, so
awesome.
I mean, it sounds amazing what you guys are building. So if you have any questions, I mean, you can pretty much just reach out to any of us or anyone, or just in the chat in general. We'd be more than happy to help.
Definitely, I'll definitely be taking you up on this as we're going ahead. It's a great community. Thank you very much, guys. So helpful.
Right. Any other questions from anyone before we close off today's water cooler?
Hello.
Shan, how you doing?
Hey, good to hear everyone. I just want to jump in quickly to just congratulate Web3 Eddie. I think they have a grant, and wanted to suggest, in addition to like pinging our Orchestrator community, we do have a channel for Web3 video app developers where we're really hoping to direct more projects who are facing a lot of these same challenges. So definitely drop in there, and the Livepeer Studio engineers and developers are like monitoring that channel a bunch as well. So just wanted to flag that. But a lot of challenges that I think a lot of other applications face. And as Alex mentioned, the team's looking at how we can solve for those in a scalable way. So I want to thank you for just raising all those cues. And Titan Node, you crushed all the answers. Thank you.
Oh, I don't crush anything. I'm just here for the lulz. Thank you for joining us, Shan. Great to hear from you again. Hope everything's going good with you. Cool. Shan, while we're at it, why don't you just introduce yourself real quick for the audience?
Sure. Hey, I'm Shan, and I am on the Livepeer core team. I actually recently got a new title / job description. I'm now officially head of ecosystem growth. And so the community function is rolling into marketing, and we're actually hiring for a community experience lead to come in and support that. And part of the reason why you guys haven't seen or heard a lot from me is because I'm out in the world doing a lot of business development for Livepeer and just really trying to grow that demand side of the network and trying to, get more applications using Livepeer across different layer 1 ecosystems. We obviously spend most of our time in the Ethereum community, but increasingly looking out to Solana, Polygon, Tezos, Avalanche across the board. We're going to Paris. I leave for Paris on Wednesday, and Livepeer is sponsoring a bunch of things that I'm super excited about, including the Metaverse Summit, which is going to be the largest gathering of folks in the Metaverse ecosystem. And I'm on a panel there on Friday with the founder of Sandbox and a few other cool Metaverse projects. We are sponsoring ECC, which is the Ethereum Community Conference, the largest gathering in Europe of the Ethereum community. We're also going to be at the Solana Hacker House in Paris, and I'm putting together an event next Monday on the future of content in Web3 with Lens and Protocol Labs, which is going to dig into a lot of like really juicy topics that are common challenges for any type of content, whether it's video or chat or whatever, including monetization, moderation, curation, and community. So we'll be sharing out lots more on that. But that's a quick update what I'm up to. Cool. And I miss you guys. Oh my God, it's been so long since I've been in a water cooler. I love you. I just tweeted about it.
Awesome. Great to see you, Shan. And thanks for coming. Yeah, great. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and call it there. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Eddie, for arriving as a new guest. And as always, I always really, really enjoy these. So the recording will be on the Titan Node YouTube. If you want to go back and watch this, feel free to see that upload. It'll be coming shortly. Thank you for coming, and we will see you all next week. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.